The old seed room behind the gin house was never meant for sick folk. The wall smelled of damp cotton. The floor was warped pine. But that August night of 1870, they called it a ward because there was nowhere else to lay Martha Green. One kerosene lamp swung from a crooked nail, throwing weak light over the table where she lay. Her fingers dug into the boards. "Hold on, girl," Aunt Dinah murmured. Her palms were brown and scarred, hands that had caught babies on this place since before Martha could walk. Now they pressed against the swollen curve of her belly. On the other side stood Dr. Harlan Cole, county physician. Sleeves rolled, spectacles low on his nose, he smelled of carbolic and sweat. He had laid out his forceps in a neat line and told himself this was only another case. "How long has she carried?" he asked, though he already knew. Dinah didn't look up. "Since Harrow owned us outright," she said. She was showing when they sold folks on the levee. Big when the soldiers rode through. Big when the man from the bureau said we was free. Belly stayed. Martha groaned as the next pain took her. Her abdomen rose round and high, like a woman 6 months gone. Only this curve had outlived a war and the word slave. Months earlier, in his ledger, Cole had written, "Colored woman M.G., Desha County. Claims pregnancy near 20 years. Abdomen firm, no motion, probable tumor. Ink had been easy. Tonight there was only blood and bone." "Doctor," Martha rasped, "look at me." He bent closer. Her eyes were clear under the fever. "I took this in when I couldn't say no," she whispered. Chain on my ankle, his hand on my neck. They took the iron off. He stayed. "You tell me. When you pull him out, is he gone? Or just find another way to sit on my chest?" Dinah made a warning sound. Cole felt heat under his collar. "Save your strength," he said. "Talk later." The lamp hissed. Martha's breath scratched the air. "Breathe with it," Dinah said. "You've been carrying too long. Let it leave you." The next contraction came like something breaking loose. Martha arched off the table. Cole set his hand and felt, not the soft roundness of a living child's skull, but the scrape of something rigid against his glove. An edge, cold and unforgiving. His stomach turned. Dinah saw his face change. "What you touching, doctor?" He didn't answer that. "We're taking it out," he said instead. "When I say push, you push. Don't hold back." Later, in a paper for the Arkansas Medical Society, he would call it, "Unusual case of long-retained fetus in a colored woman. Hard mass, partially ossified. Mother survived." "Now," he said. Martha bore down with a sound that was more rage than cry. Dinah pinned her shoulders. Cole guided the unyielding thing along a path meant for yielding bone and wet skin. At last, there was a heavy drop into the enamel basin. No thin, new wail followed, only a dull ring of metal and then a silence that made the flame seem loud. Dinah's hands flew to her mouth. Martha sagged, chest heaving in shallow spurts. "Is it out?" she whispered. "Say it's out." Cole stared at the basin. Wrapped in stained cloth, the mass was too solid, its outline too fixed. You could see where limbs had tried to be, the shadow of a skull. "It's out," he said. Her eyes closed. "Then either I get to be empty at last," she murmured, "or I go where he been waiting." Dinah bent so low her forehead nearly touched Martha's. "You still here?" she answered. "I feel your breath. Don't let them write you out while you warm." Years later, a notice about an extraordinary 20-year gestation in a colored woman of Desha County would lie quiet in a medical journal. Men would nod over it and move on. In the seed house that night, with the basin between them and the lamp swinging overhead, a question hung in the dim air. Had they ended a pregnancy or opened the way for other people to decide what those 20 years in her body would mean. Long before anyone called her Martha Green, she answered only Martha when they shouted from the big house. Cypress Bend lay close to the river then, bales on the dock, steamboats groaning past. The Harrow place sat a little higher, White House watching the rows. Martha's world was the space between kitchen yard and laundry shed, the heavy iron pot, the starch steam in her face. She was maybe 15 when Mrs. Harrow began using her inside more often. "Bring the tray upstairs," the mistress said one evening, smoothing her own dress as if nothing at all was happening. "Mr. Harrow is working late. Mind your steps." The hallway carpet felt soft under bare feet. Martha balanced the silver service, eyes on the teacups. At the bedroom door, a hand larger than her whole forearm closed over the tray and over her own fingers. "You come in," Mr. Edwin Harrow told her. No one described that room in the plantation ledger. It only knew to add columns when new hands were born. Down in the kitchen, old Esther waited until the footsteps died away. When Martha came back, she moved like someone who had walked too far in bad shoes. The tray was empty. Purple marks rose under her ear where cloth didn't hide them. Esther said nothing right then. She set another pot on the fire, pushed it toward Martha. "Stir," she said. "Keep your hands moving so they don't shake." Weeks slid by. Martha's work stayed the same, scrubbing shirts, hauling water, taking plates up and down the back stairs when called. Mrs. Harrow watched her in that sharp way white women often reserved for girls who caught their husband's gaze. One morning, Martha bent to lift a basket and felt the ground tip. Breath left her with a sour rush. Esther caught her by the elbow. "You eat today?" the old woman asked. "Bread." "Molasses." Esther's palm lay flat against the younger woman's midsection. It was still mostly flat, but not like a child's anymore. A new firmness lay under the skin, small and unmistakable. "They gon' be pleased," Esther said in a low voice only they could hear. "Say they done bread they own house gal. Say you lucky." Martha looked at the floor and said nothing. By planting time, the change was plain. Martha could not hide the swelling under thin cotton. White eyes noticed. "Well," Mrs. Harrow said at dinner, voice brittle as sugar glass. "Seems your laundry girl has found herself in the family way." Her husband cleared his throat, didn't look up from his food. Their son glanced toward the doorway where Martha stood with the coffee pot, then away again. "Little light-skinned boy running around this house won't shame us," the mistress went on. "We'll say he's from decent stock, long as he is healthy and shows." Out near the quarters, the talk ran different. "They using her like brood mare," one woman muttered. Another shook her head. "That child ain't chose none of this." Still, there were practicalities. Old Esther began saving scraps of cloth. She whispered to Martha at night, telling her how to breathe, how to sit when her back hurt, how to drink pennyroyal tea when the cramps came too much. For a while, the pregnancy behaved as others did. Her breasts ached, her feet swelled. The small life inside shifted once, twice, like a fish turning in dark water. Then, late one summer storm, the pain changed. It was not the steady rhythm Esther remembered from dozens of births. This was a tearing deep inside, coming all at once, stopping just short of relief. Blood marked the straw, but nothing followed. Martha bit the rag between her teeth. "Is it coming?" she gasped. Esther's fingers searched and found absence, no soft crown descending, no warm weight. "Something let go," the old woman said slowly, "but it ain't come out." Days passed. The spotting eased. The ache dulled. Her belly, instead of flattening, settled into a fixed roundness, neither growing nor shrinking. When Esther pressed it, it did not give like before. It felt, to her seasoned hand, like something had curled itself hard and stayed. Mrs. Harrow came by the cabin only once. "Well?" she demanded from the doorway. "Is it over?" Martha lay propped on rolled blankets. She could not look the woman in the face. Esther answered, "There won't be no baby to nurse, ma'am." The mistress drew a quick breath through her nose. "Then there's nothing more to be said. Get her back to work when she can stand. I won't have useless mouths here." In the account book in Harrow's desk, a line appeared in neat script. "Martha, expected issue, fall 51. Later, someone ran a darker stroke through the words. No note beside it. No child died. No name. Out in the quarters, the story refused to be crossed out. "Her body tried to send it back," one young woman whispered. "Or it too mean to leave," another replied. "He settled in there and turned to something else." Martha heard them. She wrapped loose garments around her middle, keeping the unchanging weight out of sight as best she could. Yet any time she bent to lift a washtub, she felt it. Solid. Foreign. Not hers, and yet entirely hers. One night, when the others slept, Esther sat down beside her pallet. The fire was almost out. Only coals glowed. "Girl," she said, palm again on that stubborn curve. "What they do to you, they'll say to forget. Papers forget easy." Her thumb moved in slow circles, feeling the immobile bulk beneath skin and muscle. "But this," she went on, "this don't forget. It's sitting there, holding on. Not alive, not gone. Carry it long enough, it'd change everything you think about yourself." Martha stared at the roof beams, eyes burning. "Will it ever leave?" she asked. Esther didn't lie. "If it go one day," she murmured, "you gon' remember every year it stayed. And if it never go, you still gon' be the one keeping count, even when they pretend nothing ever started here at all." By the time another decade slid over the river, folks on that bend no longer remembered Martha any other way than round in the middle. Seasons turned. Girls her age swelled, labored, wrapped babies to their breasts, then did it all again. Their bellies rose and fell like the river after rain. Martha's stayed at one same, stubborn curve. Under her loose dresses it kept its own shape, neither swelling nor shrinking, heavy as a kept secret. Children noticed first. They always do. "Miss Martha," a little boy asked one muggy afternoon while she rinsed shirts at the creek, "when your baby gonna come play with us?" His mama hushed him sharp, but not before Martha heard. A laugh caught in her throat. She touched the fabric over her middle like she might smooth a wrinkle. "When the Lord says so," she replied, voice flat. The boy ran off, satisfied. His mother watched Martha with a look that held pity and fear in the same glance. Word spread beyond the quarters. Hands from neighboring places passing by on Sundays would whisper, "That the one? The woman been expecting since before the last census?" Some spit over their shoulders. Others crossed themselves their own way. Then war pushed its way down the Mississippi. Gray and blue both came through, taking hogs, taking corn, taking men. Smoke stains climbed the big house columns one year when a foraging party set a shed alight. Gunfire cracked in the distance. Boys barely old enough to shave marched past row upon row of cotton stubble. Martha bent in those same rows with a sack strap across her shoulders, belly leading her like an unwanted companion. Shells might boom upriver, patrols might ride by. Her center of gravity never changed. "Look at her," one old man muttered, leaning on his hoe. "World burning. And she's still carrying what they put in her when things was quiet." Another answered, low, "Maybe that's what's keeping the old order from going in the ground. It locked up in there. Don't know it's supposed to die." She heard such talk, but her nights held more personal hauntings, the weight pressing her spine, the cramps that came sometimes like distant thunder, rumbling, threatening, then rolling away without breaking. In the dark, she'd press her fingertips into that unyielding hardness, trying to decide where she ended and it began. Toward the last lean years of the fighting, a federal surgeon came through with a chaplain, checking on the enslaved as much for disease as for souls. He lined them up, one by one, under the shade of a hacked-up sycamore. When Martha stepped forward, his brows rose. "How far along?" he asked briskly, hand already reaching to palpate. She studied his face, then said, "Sir, I don't rightly know." It'd been there since before Mr. Lincoln had whiskers like that. She gestured vaguely at the president's printed likeness on a broadside nailed to the store wall. He smirked, thinking she joked. "Months, woman, not politics." She took a breath. Something in her steadied. "Many calendars, then? More than 10? Less than 30? He snorted. Ignorant of time, like most of them, he muttered to the chaplain. Yet when he pressed her abdomen, the feel of it was wrong. Too solid, too unmoving, not like any late pregnancy he knew. In his pocket notebook, he scratched a line. Colored female, long-standing abdominal mass. Claims years of gestation. Likely tumor. Mental misapprehension. Then he snapped the book shut. The column of bodies moved on. When blue coats finally stayed longer than a day, and word freedom crept from mouth to mouth, Cypress Bend shifted names, but not soil. The Harrows became landlords. Former slaves became renters with debts already chasing them. People walked into town to register contracts, to marry under papers instead of only under trees. Young couples lined outside the freedman's agent's door, babies squirming on their hips, eyes full of tentative hope. Martha waited her turn once, hands clasped, stomach wrapped tight. The officer behind the crew desk asked routine questions without looking up. "Age?" "Near 30, she said. "Children?" Silence hung. She felt all the years between Esther's whispered instructions and that moment press against her ribs. "None," she answered at last. He glanced up then, taking in the curve beneath her shawl, the fatigue in her face. "You expecting?" he prodded. She thought of harvests, of faces that had come and gone while this thing inside her never changed. "No, sir," she replied. "Not in the way you're writing down." Men sometimes watched her with interest across prayer meetings or at river landings. A widower might talk kindly a few evenings, share tobacco and stories, and folks would murmur that maybe Martha would finally have a real family. Then someone would lean close and tell him the tale, how she'd started swelling under the old master and never truly stopped. You could see the man's shoulders stiffen as the words sank in. Within days, he would find reason to be somewhere else when she came by. "That woman bound up with trouble," one younger man said bluntly. "Ain't taking that into my house." So she worked, and she waited, carrying the same shape through changing flags. At night, the younger women, newly married, would sometimes sit beside her pallet. "They say you dream things," one whispered once, "like when bad news is coming." Martha shrugged. "You bear a weight this long. You get used to listening inside. That all." Years piled over her like cotton lint. The ache in her back became companion. Then, around the time the cornfields were high in 1869, the pain shifted. One evening, stooping to lift a water bucket, she felt a tearing deep in her side that drove her to her knees. Not the old dull throb, but a fierce clutch that made her see sparks. It passed, left her shaking. "Old hurt coming back?" a girl asked, helping her up. "No," Martha said slowly. "New one. Feels like something thinking about moving for the first time in a long while." The cramps returned, irregular at first, then closer, sharper, unlike anything she'd known since that storm night years ago. She began to lose weight everywhere except the rigid hill at her center. Sleep came in snatches, chased away by waves of pressure that crested and ebbed without resolution. Neighbors urged her to seek help beyond the patch of land where her life had been penned. "They're a doctor yonder in town now," someone said. "One works with colored folks, so they claim. Maybe he know what to do with such a thing." A petition went up through church folk and a schoolteacher who could write proper letters. Word reached the man in charge of federal assistance in the area. In his tidy office, far from the creak of Martha's bed slats, he read and dipped his pen. No available space for chronic-colored patient in Little Rock Charity Ward at present time. Advise local practice to attend as able. Patient to remain at light labor. The note traveled back, folded into a pocket Bible. The answer was clear. The larger world would not take her burden off their hands. So, as another July pressed down on Desha County, the same woman who had first been forced into this condition under a roof of painted wood lay on a pallet in a converted storehouse, breath hitching against a pressure that felt older than the war. Every tightening whispered the same thing into her bones. This cannot sit in you forever. The next pain was not like the old cramps that had haunted Martha for years. It rose slow and heavy, as if someone were twisting a bar through her middle, and the little storeroom tipped around her. Lamp smoke and hot night air swam while she clawed at the ticking. "Stay with me," Aunt Dinah said, voice rough and steady. One hand braced Martha's shoulder, the other pressed on that long, swollen belly. "You've been holding on near 20 years. Time to let go." Dr. Harlan Cole stood at the foot of the cot, coat off, spectacles low. The lantern on the crate threw his shadow up the boards. He had brought babies into the world in cabins and tents. He had never seen a womb that belonged to 3 different decades. He slid a gloved hand inside. What met his fingers was not the soft curve of a living head, nor the slack give of a lost child. It was rigid, fixed. "It's hard," he said before he could school his voice. "Encased, like bone in a shell." Dinah's eyes flashed. "Can you take it or can't you?" "If I do nothing, she dies," he answered. "If I try, she may still. But there's no other way." Another contraction seized Martha, stronger, deeper. Behind her eyes she saw rows of cotton, a gray coat on the porch, blue soldiers by the gate, a freedmen's man reading terms she hardly heard, because all she could feel was that same weight under her ribs. "Push with it," Dinah urged. "Don't fight now." Martha bore down, teeth chattering. Cole set his jaw, worked the forceps around the edge he felt, metal scraping where no metal ought to be. The sound made Dinah flinch. With a dragging pull, something slid free and dropped into the basin with a dull knock. Not the wet weight of a newborn, not the slack fall of a stillborn. A different sound, closer to a stone on tin. Pain fell away so fast, Martha gasped. Her hands flew to her middle, feeling the slackness there. "Is it gone?" she whispered. "It's out," Dinah said. "Keep your eyes on me." Martha licked her lips. "Let me see," she breathed. "I carried it when I had no name but his. I carried it when they said we was free. I'll look at what's been using my breath." Cole had already lifted the basin. His mind leapt to a hall in Little Rock, older men bending over this marvel of pathology. "You need rest," he began. "There is no need for you to—" "Doctor." Dinah stepped between him and the door. "Before that's your specimen, it's her burden. Turn back." He stared at her. He had the degree, the race, the owner's favor. Yet in this cramped room, with Martha's whisper hanging in the heat, he set the basin down. Dinah folded the cloth away. In the lamplight lay something about the size of an infant. But wrong. Pale plates fused together, a warped curve where a small spine might have been limb shape stopped halfway and sealed. It looked less like something born than something dug out of rock. Martha pushed herself up on one elbow. Her gaze moved over it. Her face did not twist. "He got old in me," she said softly. "Never cried, never walked, just sat there, turning to stone while I picked they cotton." Dinah's fingers tightened on the cot rail. To her, it was years of fear and silence hardened into one small lump. Cole reached for his notebook, already cutting the night into neat lines. Colored female, about 35. Retained fetal mass. Duration approximately 20 years. Extensive calcification. While his pen scratched, Martha let her head sink back. Her belly felt light and raw. She did not know if fever would come or if her heart would hold. She only knew that at last her body was not carrying him. "Don't leave me out your writing," she murmured. "Else they'll say it was only a case, not a woman." "I hear you," Dinah replied. "I ain't forgettin'." Outside, insects shrilled over the fields. Inside, on a crate in a cheap enamel bowl, lay what the doctor would soon call an extraordinary specimen, and what people along Cypress Bend would be calling something else entirely. By noon, the heat pressed down on the yard like another roof. The little storeroom behind the big house smelled of lye soap, stale sweat, and the iron tang of what had happened there before dawn. Dr. Cole had traded his blood-spotted shirt for a clean one. On the overturned crate that served as his table lay a narrow pine box, lid propped open. Inside, wrapped in clean muslin, was the thing he had lifted from Martha's body. He bent over it again, unable to keep from looking. Under his fingers, he could feel edges through the cloth, curved, rigid, wrong for any living infant, but perfectly right for the words he was already arranging in his head. "Desha County, female, colored, approximate age," he muttered, pausing to dip his pen. "Retention, 2 decades, extensive calcification." The ink glistened dark on the page. Behind him, the door hinges creaked. Aunt Dinah stepped in, shoulders squared as far as her years allowed. 3 women hovered in the doorway, headscarves damp, hands twisting in their aprons. "You done measuring?" Dinah asked. Cole didn't turn. "For now. I'll complete the description in town." "And what you fixin' to do with that?" Her chin jerked toward the box. He closed the notebook, finally meeting her eyes. "It must be examined properly. Little Rock has a society of physicians. They need to see a specimen like this. It could advance understanding by—" "It ain't a curiosity," one of the women blurted. "That's her baby." Cole's mouth tightened. "Madam, it was never viable. It is organized tissue, nothing more." Dinah stepped closer to the crate. She carried, nothing more, while folks was bought and sold. Picked for them, cooked for them, slept light 'cause of it. You say it's just tissue. Her back say something else. She laid a broad hand on the lid. "We need to put it in the ground." Before Cole could answer, a taller shadow filled the door. Mr. Harrow's son, hat in hand, face already flushed from the sun and his own temper. "I hear there's a fuss over that thing," he said. "Doctor, you intend to cart it off?" Cole inclined his head. "It's a case men in Little Rock would travel to see. There is value in it." Harrow Jr. glanced at the box, then at Dinah and the others. "Long as no one starts telling tales about where it came from." He didn't speak his father's name. He didn't have to. Every person in that room knew which white man had first sent Martha up to the house. "You got my leave to take whatever you need for your books," he went on. "Just keep it clean. No gossip about this place." Dinah's nostrils flared. "She got some say, too." "Who?" he snapped. "Martha." She jerked her head toward the inner room where the patient lay. "She woke enough to speak. You go hear her yourself, if you so keen on deciding." Harrow hesitated, then waved a hand. Very well. Let's get it over with. They filed into the second room. Martha lay propped on folded quilts, skin gray against the pillowcase. Sweat had dried in salt traces along her temples. Her hands, thin from years of labor, rested light on the flattened cloth over her belly. Harrow hovered near the doorway, as if touch alone might stain him. Cole moved to the bedside, professional concern on his face. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Empty," Martha replied, voice rough. "First time since I was a girl." She swallowed. "Dinah say y'all arguing about him." "That material needs proper study," Cole began. "You want to carry what I carried," she murmured. Her eyes slid from the doctor to Harrow, and for the first time in years, she let herself look straight at the man who bore his father's jaw. "You didn't bear it when it was flesh. Now you want it when it turned to rock." Harrow's gaze hardened. "No one is speaking of origins. We're speaking of disposal." Martha drew a shallow breath. "You asked what I want?" Cole shifted. "It's important for Martha," Dinah said softly. She ignored the doctor. "I want him laid down like the child he never got to be, not on some shelf for you to point at. Put him where the others is, by the old trees." Her eyes closed, then opened again. "If he had breathed, you'd have wrote his name and called him yours. Now he never did. You going to write about him and never write about me." Silence hung heavy. A fly buzzed against the window pane. "That graveyard is on my land," Harrow said at last. "I decide who goes in it." "You already decided once," Dinah replied, voice low. "When you sent her up them steps years back. This time, let her decide." Cole looked between them, jaw working. Part of him wanted to insist, to speak of science and progress, and the honor of having one's case discussed in cities she'd never see. But the words curdled before he could form them. Martha's eyes were too old, too tired. "You have your notes, doctor," Dinah added. "You wrote how hard it was, how long it stayed. That's more than most of what happened here ever got." He exhaled slowly. "I can describe it without retaining the object. The men in Little Rock won't be pleased, but the description itself has merit." Harrow frowned. "You're letting a patient and a midwife tell you how to practice medicine now?" "I'm letting a woman who survived what would have killed most dictate where the result of it lies," Cole answered, surprising himself. Harrow swore under his breath and stalked out, boots striking the packed earth. Martha's hand groped for Dinah's. "You'll see to it," she whispered. "I will," Dinah said. "You rest now." That night, when the moon was a thin hook over the cypress and the frogs sang along the river, 4 figures moved along the edge of the fields. Dinah walked in front, lantern turned low, the wrapped bundle held tight against her chest. Behind her came 2 women and an old man with a shovel over his shoulder. They slipped through the broken fence into the overgrown burying ground, where rough boards and sunken earth marked those who had gone without sermons. Among those mounds, they chose a small space, no bigger than a child's crib. The first scoop of soil hit the cloth with a muffled pat. No one spoke. Whatever Dr. Cole would one day send to a journal, whatever Harrow chose to forget, here under the Arkansas dirt lay the piece of Martha's life they refused to let become only a paragraph. In the reading room of the State Archives, the air was cool enough to raise bumps on Angela Green's arms. Outside, Little Rock baked. Inside, only the hum of a ceiling fan and the whisper of old paper. She had come looking for land deeds. Instead, in a gray box labeled Arkansas Medical Society, Proceedings, 1870-1890, she unfolded a brittle journal and saw a heading that stopped her mid-breath. On a case of prolonged retention of a fetus in a colored woman. Desha Coe, Ark. No name. just M, colored, about 35. The author, H. Cole, M.D., described a plantation near the Mississippi, a woman who believed herself with child for near 2 decades, the removal of a hardened, shell-like mass, the weight, the dimensions. A neat drawing in ink showed something between skeleton and stone. Angela read the last sentence twice. The specimen was at first retained for further study, subsequent disposition not recorded. She closed her eyes. She had heard a version of this before. Weeks earlier, in another archive, she'd threaded a reel of WPA field notes into a reader. There, in the careful typing of a 1930s interviewer, an elderly black woman from Cypress Bend had said, "Her name was Martha Green. White folks wrote her down as sick. We said she'd been carrying that man's sin till it hardened inside her. They took it out and wanted to show it round. But the old midwife, she put it in the ground with our people." Back then it had sounded like a parable, half sermon, half rumor. Now, staring at Cole's tidy Latin phrases, Angela understood. The case and the story were the same life, split into 2 languages. She spent the afternoon following the trail. In a Desha County ledger, she found a faint line, almost erased. Unknown colored child, unusual remains, interred near old slave lot, 1870, at request of midwife. No mention of Martha. No mention of what had been done to make her expectant in the first place. But the bones of the narrative were there, hidden under institutional handwriting. That evening she drove south. The highway followed the river's curve. Soybean fields spread where cotton had once stood. In a small town not far from the old landing, she sat at a kitchen table with a woman in her 70s who wore her hair in silver twists and introduced herself as Lottie Green. "We always been from down here," Lottie said, pouring sweet tea. Great. Something named Martha. Folks said she never had no living babies, but she had a belly that wouldn't leave her." Angela laid photocopies between the salt shaker and the sugar bowl. The nameless article, the burial entry, the WPA page with Martha Green typed in uneven letters. Lottie pushed her glasses up, reading in silence. When she reached the interview extract, she gave a thin, humorless smile. "My grandma used to say, 'Don't carry nobody's burden so long it turns hard in you,'" she murmured. "We thought she just meant don't let men walk over you. Maybe she was talking about this too." "Does anyone still speak her name?" Angela asked. "In this house, yes," Lottie replied. "Church folk, maybe not. Doctor folk, surely not. For them, she was a marvel in a bottle. For us, she's why the women tell the girls. If something's wrong and they won't listen, keep hollering till somebody does. Don't go 20 years quiet like Martha." Later, Angela stood alone on the edge of the old burying ground. The stones had fallen. Briars clawed at her skirt. Somewhere under that uneven earth lay the bundle Dinah had carried, the one Cole had wanted to keep. She imagined 2 funerals happening at once. In one, a pine box lowered by lantern light, women humming low. In the other, a journal article sailing north to sit on a shelf, stripped of its subject's name. Back in her hotel room, she opened her laptop and began to type. Case reports can preserve rare events. They can also erase the person inside them. This is not only a description of calcified tissue in a black woman's body. It is part of a longer story of how black women's pain was turned into data while their names were left in the dirt. She hesitated, then added, her name, in the mouths of those who knew, was Martha. If you're listening to this, you may be thinking of women you've known, mothers, aunts, neighbors, who said doctors brushed them off, told them to bear it, to wait, to be quiet. You may have your own family sayings about not letting sorrow harden inside you. The journals kept Martha as a curiosity. Her people kept her as a warning and a prayer. Tonight, By hearing her tale all the way through, you've joined the second archive, not the first. Somewhere in Arkansas, a girl may grow up hearing, "Don't let what they did to Martha happen to you." She might never read Dr. Cole's paper. She might never know the word for what lodged in that woman's womb. And if you've stayed with me to this point, you're helping ensure that Martha Green is no longer just M. Colored, age about 35, in a forgotten volume, but a whole life we refuse to let turn to stone.